Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're all doing great, as I always say, following the 3 H's of the channel and all that good stuff. And this video, straight up, is going to get weird and scary, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. Back in 2013, my dad told me about some stuff that happened really early in the morning back when he was still living with his parents in the southern US. So this community that he was living in, it was quite small, less than 500 people, and it was near the US southern border. So he woke up in the middle of the night and had to go to the bathroom. For some reason, he likes to pee outside at night. I never got it, but everybody has their thing. So it's nice and dark outside, and he said the atmosphere was kind of spooky. The only light present was coming from a nearby streetlight. Now, he was walking to his favorite pee spot, I guess, and he glanced up at the detached garage, and he sees something. He sees a silhouette of something large perched on the garage roof. He stares at it, unsure of what it is. It seems to be staring back at him. He can just feel it. And then, suddenly, the silhouette outstretches incredibly huge wings. Then, it begins flapping them. The wing flaps are loud, and he can feel the wind off them. Its wingspan is incredible. This thing looks kind of almost like a person with wings, and it takes off into the night sky. He stands there for a few seconds in awe, and then he did his business and went back inside. My dad didn't get a good look at the thing. At least not good enough to notice super specific details. But the thing that stood out to him was how large this was, and how loud it was as it started to flap its giant wings and fly. The first time I heard this story, my dad said something about it being a la lechuza, referring to Mexican folklore of witches that can shapeshift their body into an owl while keeping their human face. My cousin always calls it the Birdman for some reason, but I was always partial to the prior one, 'cause it's a creepier name. Another theory I was fond of was that it was potentially a thunderbird, but I don't know much about those. I've also heard it could be a Mothman. I grew up in a small village in Poland. Right next to my house was a narrow path. Sometimes farmers used it to reach their fields. That's where the path led. But this didn't happen very often. They had much better and more well-maintained roads. That's why it was an ideal place to learn to ride a bike. Lots of space, secluded, and grassy. I spent many summer mornings and afternoons there, riding back and forth. The story happened when I was a kid. It was early July, a few days before my birthday actually. I took some snacks, some water, and rode the path as usual. At first, it was peaceful. But then I saw two dogs in front of me. It disturbed me because I recognized the dogs, and I knew that they were aggressive. But they weren't that close yet, so I decided to go slowly away. To the left was private lands, so I couldn't go there, and I couldn't just turn around and go home, 'cause I didn't want to turn my back to the dogs. I knew that they would start chasing me if I did. I decided to turn to the right of the paths. For a while, I was still a bit scared. I kept looking back to see if they followed me, but they didn't. I focused on my surroundings. All around me were empty grasslands. No trees, no rivers, just dry grass stretching all the way to a distant forest. I thought that it would be so cool to ride there. I think that this was around noon, so I rode and I rode and rode, but the forest wasn't getting any closer, no matter how fast or how far I went. Suddenly, I realized that I could no longer hear any sounds. Just a moment ago, I heard birds and wind and bugs, but now everything got so quiet so quickly and so still that it just rang in my ears. The only sound I heard once or twice was some distant calling. I think calling my name. And the air was very heavy and stifling. You would think that a bad storm was coming, but no. The sky was bright blue. Everything around was so unnaturally bright and hot. Then I felt as though something was after me, like I had just fallen into a trap, and the forest was still so far away. Then I look up at the sky, thinking what I should do next, and that's the last thing I remember. My parents found me that evening. I would think it was just a heat stroke, but some things are odd. My parents found me, actually right nearby the forest, and I have no recollection of going so close. Remember, no matter how fast or how far I rode, the forest got no closer to me. The forest was still very much far away in my last memory. Did something move me there? The next thing is my bike. It was destroyed. Some parts were in the grassland. Other parts ended up in the forest. But the worst was the sense of dread that I had. Even after 18 years, I still feel very uneasy whenever the sun shines a bit too bright. Romanian folklore is full of spooky stories, with a lot of cryptids and other things of that nature. I have a couple stories from my grandparents who lived in a rural area most of their lives. One of the most prevalent ghosts are the IL, some kind of nymphs or fae. They usually are seen in groups of 3 at night, singing some songs. These songs are said to be beautiful. They're hypnotic. They sound like masterpieces to the human ear. So this is before the World War II era. My grandfather and 3 of his buddies were out together at night. They were going with the horses into the hills to let them eat, so the following day they would work well. This is pretty common. So while the horses are eating along and doing their thing, they lay down on the grass, look at the sky, and are just talking. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, they hear a beautiful song. It's sung by women. The octaves are really high, but the voices are so magical and soothing. They know what's going on. They keep their mouths shut. This area that they're in, these hills, are called hunting grounds of the IL. They lure them, usually by singing near forests. It's actually bone-chilling, but it seems to take a hold of you. After the sound has stopped, they wait for another 10 minutes. They get on their horses. They book it. In the commotion, one of the horses got left behind, and saving their asses was their first priority anyways. The next day, they find burned circles in the grass. It's said that when these things dance, they leave burned circles. One shepherd tells them that he found their horse, well, not all of it, half of it, in the forest. What's left of this horse they find hanging by its intestines on a tree. Its face is half carved to the skull. The IL are effing crazy. Another one that I'm not sure exists in other parts of the world, but weird stuff happens at crossroads at night. So once again, it was my grandfather's family, but his brother. He was coming home from a tavern. It was a little ways away, and far enough from his house. Still walking distance, though. It's 1 a.m. He comes to a crossroads. He hears something akin to a shriek coming from behind him. It's a lamb coming at a fast pace toward him while screaming loudly. And it's very fast and out of nowhere. My granddad's brother is calm. It's just a lamb, and he walks on. The lamb begins to follow him, still bleeding and screaming. He stops. The lamb stops too, but it doesn't get any closer. It just sits there and looks at him while screaming. My granddad's brother throws a rock at it. It doesn't flinch. He's not scared of it, so he runs straight toward the lamb to try and push it or kick it away, something. He starts charging toward it, and when he gets about a meter away, this lamb's shriek transforms into a very low-pitched scream, the kind that turns your stomach. The man freezes. He starts to pray, saying a protection prayer. Halfway through, he begins to feel sick and dizzy. The last thing he sees are the lamb having these almost human eyes. He faints. He wakes up the next day, still at the crossroads. This story was sent in by Corey. Corey sent in a story before about a really wild encounter with a family of Bigfoot. Now, he sent in another story, so I hope I can do this story justice as well, Corey. My name is Corey, and this is the second story that I am submitting. Now, I not only wish to share it with all you fans, but first, I personally would like to give thanks to everyone for all the interest in my writings, and I hope you will continue to support Tim's channel. Thank you. And also, I hope to eventually earn your trust because every word is true. Tim is totally awesome, and that's a shameless plug. Thank you again. Now, please grab a stump, and let's get back on track, shall we? This is not only my true account of high strangeness in the desert, but it was also witnessed by many of the citizens living in and around the Superstition Mountains of Arizona. This is important, and I will circle back to explain this later in the story. Naturally, I am referring to an area which I am sure some of you listeners are familiar with, because of all the crazy and strange tales in this creepy-ass wasteland, the Superstition Mountains. Again, I reiterate that this tale is not only very bizarre, but it's 100% non-fiction. I beg you all, please, be patient and bear with me while you listen to my sordid tale. As it begins one beautiful spring long ago in the month of March in 1997. That is the day when 5 of my friends and yours truly took LSD to go on a backpacking adventure. We were all hiking uphill to a spot where we were told that we would obtain a bird's eye view overlooking Phoenix's valley floor. It was here, high above the desert floor, that we all witnessed a giant mother of a spaceship. After taking the acid, our group began climbing the Peralta Trail. It zigzags uphill to a mine entrance, and it's known locally as the Ear of Superstitions. Somewhere high above the Phoenix Valley floor, There is a natural shelf made of red rock that's approximately 1,900 feet above sea level. The shelf itself is bowl-shaped, and when you combine it with the mine, it creates an unusual anomaly that really acts like an actual ear duct. It is here that our group witnessed the giant mother spaceship. In early March, we had went on a road trip to Florence Junction to enjoy the Renaissance Festival. I remember it after a long hot spring day, spent drinking yards of beer, eating turkey legs, and watching jousting, when one of our group ended up buying some LSD. My friends consisted of Matthias, Daryl, Rob, Jay, Brianna, and myself. Matthias was the oldest and the wisest, so we naturally chose him as the unofficial leader. It was his suggestion that we trip and camp out. The decision was made to hike up the Peralta Trail to the ear of the superstitions. This is the spot where Apaches would have had lookouts to give advanced warning for enemy raiding parties. It is also the entrance to a mine, and it's the access point of the natural ear canal, and you can literally see and hear everything for up to 50 miles in every direction. Among the jumping cholla cactus, we laughed and then we dozed. Full of that nervous energy and excited, we all started zigzagging for about 2 miles up to nearly the top of the Superstition Mountains. The climb took approximately 3 hours, and upon arrival at the shelf, we were all peaking. At this point, we had a dinner break and watched the sunset before entering the mine. It was dusk while we stowed our gear and donned our headlamps to head down into an eerie darkness. The mine gradually slopes forever downwards into total darkness. The floor consisted of a fine dust as we shuffled deep into the bowels of hell. However, the miners had enough forethought to bore air holes at different points. It was at one of these air shafts that we had descended over 2 miles underground that we did the test, quotes. It's hard to describe what it's really like to be 2 miles underground, surrounded by tons of solid rock. But when we all shut off our headlamps, the mood switched from happiness to unease. The mine looked spooky as moonbeams penetrated the rock filtering through this air shaft. At this point, everyone was tripping pretty good, and that's when we suddenly turned a corner. Surprisingly, the mine shaft opened up into a gigantic cavern, and we absolutely could go no further without the proper climbing gear. The cavern walls glittered and sparkled as the moonlight shone through the lonely air vent onto the walls formed of natural crystals, and we all heard a distinct twittering sound that seemed to fill the air. So we were just standing around, paused for the moment when Jay asked out loud, "What's that noise?" At this point, we were all wondering what our next move should be, when my BFF Jay stupidly grabbed the flashlight from my hands, and before I could stop him, he shined it onto the cavern walls. Instantly, the walls came alive. 100,000 bats flew straight at us. Everyone began panicking, except me, of course. They all started running and screaming bloody murder and heading for the exit. I stood there, grinning like a Cheshire cat as Jay screamed, "They're in my hair." Sighing, I pulled the little guy or girl off of Jay, and that's when he leaned over to toss his cookies. In that moment, I suddenly realized how much danger we were really in because the air smelled so strongly of ammonia. Bat guano can be fatal, so I helped Jay up and we stumbled together toward the entrance to meet up with all our other friends. We congregated at the EOS shelf again, and I laughed, stating, "Well, that was a hell of a thing." That's when the humming began. We were all sitting on the ledge overlooking the valley's lights. It was amazing. Believe it or not, we could even see the Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe. Best guess, it was over 30 miles away, and a football game was going on. I couldn't believe it. We could actually hear the whistles and calls from the referees at this height. That's when Matthias said, "I told you so." And that is when the night got really weird. Just when I thought this fantastic adventure couldn't get any better, suddenly lights appeared in the sky west of the stadium. All our jaws dropped wide open as we stared, shocked and stunned. The humming revealed a 2-mile-wide obsidian-colored oval spaceship silently drifting toward the stadium. No one spoke. By this time, we had already come down off our acid trip, and I cried out, "They're here." This is my best description of the mothership. It was a boomerang-shaped object, at least 2 miles wide, and it was obsidian-colored, like volcanic glass. It also seemed to shimmer. It had 6 or 7 lights that didn't blink. At this point, it was only about 20 miles from us, drifting closer and closer. That's when it suddenly spun on its axis, and the white lights morphed into smaller ships, and then separated to begin fluttering about like dragonflies on a hot summer's night. The mothership hovered over the Sun Devil Stadium, and I actually remember hearing the crowd murmur in hushed tones. My theory, all these years later, is that the mothership may have mistook the stadium for one of its own, possibly in distress. The mothership was positively massive, and it dwarfed the stadium, which was now engulfed in its shadow. I know in my heart that this ship was not from this earth, or some type of experimental government aircraft. No way. By this time, the smaller crafts had moved away, and the mothership seemed to realize its mistake, and just as quickly as it appeared, the mothership started glittering like diamonds in the sky. Then it shimmered again, and totally dematerialized in front of 10,000 witnesses. And that, my cyber friends, is my true account of one of the most famous UFO sightings in American history, the 1997 Phoenix Lights. Now I know that many of you will think that this was just a drug-addled hallucination, but if you don't believe me, there are several videos of this event on YouTube. Just Google the 1997 Phoenix Lights. So please believe me when I tell you, we are definitely not alone. Thanks again, and tune in if Corey sends any more stories. So, Corey, I hope I could do your story justice. Thank you for sending it in. So, what'd you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you want to. In the description as well is a link to a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to donate to the channel that way. With the Patreon, it's kind of a give what you want type of thing, and you get the video a day early. But yeah, that's just if you can. Just watching the video, liking and commenting and all that stuff is great too. I really appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel or want something else to watch that you've already seen but maybe you like the video, I'll put a couple videos up here on the screen. They'll be up there somewhere. And with that, I think I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.